Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I think we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Top Shelf Fandom. Let me get confirmation on being live. I got a new PC here. Test run in OBS, so be patient for one moment. But I think we should be good. Let me know too, also in the chat, how the sound is, because again, I'm just setting up this stuff. So let's make sure that I went live to the right channel. Let's see. And it looks like I am live. How is the sound, everybody? Just let me know if it sounds like I'm screaming. And what's going on, AU Pack Mule? Can't wait to have you on tomorrow night. The Episode Club, Mackenzie L. Burns. What's going on? And John Haymaker, Danny McKay, AK. Haven't seen you in a while. What's going on? And yeah, we're going to get started here in a minute. Let me just make sure I don't sound like I'm screaming, and we should be good. And I think it went up on the right link. All right, so I've been playing around with a few different scenarios and what I think is going to be happening in the season finale of Westworld, but also Westworld overall. Like what's the end game here? So let me get the chat down, and I think we've got some key references and some proof of, I'm not going to make bold claims saying exactly how things are going to happen or anything like that, but I think it's important to take note of what Westworld is asking us, because they are asking, they're not telling. And I think that's very important to always be conscious of, is that, Westworld is going to tell us at the end what happens, and that's when we get into to these characters. If done correctly and efficiently, they will tell us what happened to Dolores, what happens to Maeve, what happens maybe to Caleb or the Man in Black. But the questions that they're posing overall are far deeper reaching than any of that. So it's, what is Westworld asking, and how is Westworld asking these things? And that's what we're going to get into, because that plays heavily into what I'm proposing here, because realistically, there's a lot of scenarios in which you get a lot of biblical references, or, literary references in general, or you can look for historical context that relates to something that's happening in a story. Like, per se, Jon Snow is heavily, related, and there's a lot of parallel storytelling going there if you're going with, like the story of Jesus Christ, even the story of George. You can always pull these connections, but isolated alone, I always feel like they're unlikely. I don't do a lot of theories because I don't like to just speculate for speculation's sake. I enjoy some theories. I think that, we deal with a lot of just shock value stuff, and those tend to do the best. And my theories, things I say don't really, I don't know, get the blood going or whatever, but the things I say do tend to come true, because I'm trying to stay within the story. And I feel that that's just, I can't spend time on things that are just, I know for a fact are unlikely to be true. Not to say that I haven't been wrong. I've been wrong a lot about the last season of Game of Thrones, but I happen to wear that as a badge of honor. Because if I went about how I theory craft and I came to the conclusion of what happened, that would make me greatly question my ability or what I feel I am capable of as far as deconstructing story and analyzing literature. So yeah, I take that as a badge of honor. If you're right about everything that happened in season 8, and that's what you end, then it's, take that however you want. We won't get into it. But we're going to talk about technological questions being answered by the physiological, the psychological, the philosophical, and the theological means, the methods to go about these technological questions in which Westworld is posing to us is a very philosophical and psychological, for the most part, approach. So, and that's what the show does so well, and that's why I think it's so fascinating. So we're going to talk about books and doors, meaning the use of story. And I didn't label my images, of course, because I am a fool. But 1 second. Yeah, a book is like a door. You open them up and you go through another world. And that is very true. And so that is going to play into this. So before I get into the theory, let's look at what season 1 to the projected season 5. And let me just check in the chat and see what you guys, and make sure everything is going. All right. So I'm going to do this a little bit of, I don't know why my slideshow refuses to work up here. Probably because I'm live and it's just, life is never going to be good, evidently. But oh well, There's Caleb and Dolores. There's one of them that will come up. So season 1. Okay, this is a very baseline approach to this. Can the host achieve consciousness? So that season poses that question to us. So when that season poses that question to us, it by definition then makes us reverse engineer humans, because the show is about what makes us what we are, what are we, and what is ethical behavior. Because the ability to be conscious is the ability to have introspection. It is the ability to be aware of your actual actions and in what is around you. So if you are conscious, then you are just like free will, you're burdened with the actual outcome of your decisions. If you're conscious of your decisions, you are burdened with, the self-reflection on if you're an ethical or moral person, like we're seeing with The Man in Black. So season 1 beautifully demonstrates this. It's one of the best seasons of television in television history, in my opinion. It sounds hyperbolic, but I truly mean it, because the way in which they jump throughout time gives us this juxtaposition of, okay, the hosts are acting up in sector blah, blah, blah. And then you'll go to the park, and they do this kind of in a very cloak and dagger way. And you'll see, either Teresa or Elsie or Bernard, discussing they're only doing this because they had this programmed into them. And then it makes you think, because this is one of the biggest points of contention here, we speak so firmly about these artificial beings, and this is, a commentary on real life as well, but in the show as well, I see a lot of people argue that they can't be conscious because they don't have a biological makeup. And consciousness is theory. It is a theory of mind. It cannot be proved. We each have an internal dialogue in which we personally believe we are conscious, because we exhibit everything that consciousness is defined by. But again, there's really, no way, solid way, at least yet, to absolutely confirm this. So I see a lot of people saying, well, they can't because they didn't, come to be a sentient being like I did. So I guess evolution, right? Well, there's nothing that goes with evolution being at all connected to being self-aware. Intelligence, meaning the information consumed, does not fit into that either. There's no tying factor. So you have to argue this in a sense of proof to what it is, because what it comes down to at a very base level is, I'm special because it's me. We either are, spawned through special creation. I call it divine right, but that's not really the right vernacular there. Special creation means you were created by a God, and that means that, you are special because you are God's creature and you don't believe anybody else is. I have nothing against that if the argument is posed to somebody that is going to be transparent and say that I am a believer in this or that, which there's no problem with. Then that argument, at least using the logic in which they live by, has some sense to it. What the show is posing to us is, a lot of times, and I've had these arguments with proposed atheists, and I lean more that way myself, and you will hear them in one breath say, oh, well, they're not like me. And then, well, you want to ask about a nervous system. They don't want to address that. You want to ask about this. So what it does come down to is, I don't believe in God, but I'm special because I was created by a God. So it's not meant to disparage religion. It's not meant to promote religion. It's meant to make us ask these questions. And that is why we have biblical references, because we have a creation story. This is a story about creation. It's creation of hosts, but every single question in which we ask saying, they're not made like us. Okay, so how were we made? So then it makes us go back and reverse engineer, and that's where it becomes problematic for us. So some of these questions, yes, probably will never have answers, unfortunately. So the series, though, is always giving you that juxtaposition, whether or not people are conscious of it or even want to have those conversations. It's very beneficial because of that, because it's very intriguing. So can they become conscious? Yes, they can. What is consciousness? Well, we still can't really define it in any other sense of what the attributes, but again, where does it come from? Is it part of the body, mind? Where's the connection there? And so forth. So you get a lot of good storytelling, and we see the first use of a biblical allegory, almost a very close to a allegorical take on original sin. Genesis, we're talking Adam and Eve here with Dr. Ford and Arnold. So this is what I'm getting at here, because with my theory, we are going to be abiding by, trust me, there's a method to this mayhem, a strict connection to a biblical and historical reference, which I will rarely do because they usually don't hold up, especially if they stand alone. Hold on. especially when my phone has been dropped. So what we have here is a situation with Rehoboam, who is the son of Solomon. Now, before I get to the end of it, I do want to just, preface this with they are descendants of David, the same David that killed Goliath, supposedly. So the person in which I'm going to bring up that has not been brought up in the show is the person that comes into play after Rehoboam, which is Jeroboam. And I didn't make the names up. I don't know why everybody named themselves Boams. Maybe it's like Steads in the times of the Saxons. But anyways, nobody in the show references who comes into power after Rehoboam, and that is Jeroboam, and it happens to be the first non-Davidian king, meaning doesn't spawn from the line of David, a godly, at least endorsed by God, divine right to rule. So it's a change in guard. And why would they give us a Solomon build, which implies knowledge? It implies at least a better working system, correct? And then Rehoboam, who would name? That's bad branding. Rehoboam was not known for a very successful rule. Jeroboam is a slave, at least the leader of the slave army from what the historical accounts say in the biblical accounts, that ends up uprising. Are we making any connections yet? Dolores is most likely going to end up embodying Jeroboam, and we'll stop it there for a moment because we're going to continue on with the season 2 story thread. So can the host escape the park? So what does that pose to us? A similar situation. Again, this is embodying another biblical story. This is Exodus. So I'm just laying down the context for what we're saying, because if we're going to say that Dolores is going to end up along the same plight that Jeroboam was from the Bible, we have to show the times in which they've used these connections and correlations before. Where does this parallel storytelling come in? Where is it not? Is this justified to make a claim like this based off of, okay, that's the next person in line. They're using some biblical references. So yeah, okay, I guess that could happen. It's at least got logic behind it. I'm saying it's likely to happen because of this. So with Exodus, we have season 2, and we see, again, this is a great example of using, okay, can they escape the park? But it's showing their abilities versus the biological beings' abilities. And it's showing a few, Maeve specifically, embracing the park. So it's also bringing up allegory of the cave, and it's bringing up things throughout the season like Riddle of the Sphinx, because it's not just a Abrahamic Bible in which they're referencing all stories that are creation stories, because it is the only way to really go about a spawning and rise of a new race if we ignore how we explained ours. Whether you're a religious person or not, and again, just to make sure it doesn't sound like I'm trying to shill for the Bible here or anything I'm not really that religious person. I respect spirituality, but I don't, I'm not here trying to sell you a bill of goods. I'm here trying to show you what the show has been using, and I think they're kind of on the same stance. It's important to take note of the stories in which we tell ourselves about us, because with the bicameral mind, that is Julian Jaynes' main thesis, and I'm currently going through the actual book, which is really good, but I do recommend you read it because it'll tell you a lot about Westworld. But also keep in mind that just like all other theories of mind, is not a set in stone thing. It's not proven. It's actually these days kind of shunned. And I can understand why listening to it. So you have to really listen to it like I am, and make sure to keep that and don't have that form into your opinions. And I've been very careful if I say something along the lines that schizophrenia is the same thing as hearing voices in your head, and that anything like that, just stop me. So there's some information in there that's absolutely incorrect. But anyways, so we have a lot of great examples paralleling and using literature as well, because stories again are what we tell ourselves to explain our actions. You say, I'm hungry, that's why I ate after the fact. You say, I must have been tired because I went to sleep. So Julian Jaynes and this thesis, this model for the theory of mind in which they are using to construct this show and structure it, because you do have to have a base model to try to explain consciousness if you're going to do a show about it, is very, very reliant on this whole thing that before the bicameral man took over, that there was a lack of self-introspection in story. They use the Iliad and they use the Old Testament. And again, I'm saying this is what they posed. This was quickly kind of shut down, especially the Old Testament one. But it still is the thesis they're working off of, is that as soon as we started to tell stories that showed reflection, meaning like self-reflection, or any type of conscious decision of ethical behavior, this is when the bicameral mind came into play, and the awakening of sorts would come about. So it's very important to take note of the stories in which they use. And it's not all just biblical or spiritual Alice in Wonderland. Why do we tell those stories? Well, because they're about change, and they're about a reality, and they're about questioning the reality you're in, and how finite is it. So season 3, we're in right now, and this is, can they survive outside of the park? So this is a natural progression. Can they? How do they? And now, what do they do now that they're in this new world? If this was a series just about can hosts become conscious, first off, it wouldn't have a lot of, validity, because, again, we can't prove consciousness ourselves, no matter how many times we want to say that we're conscious because we're special and the host just can't be it, and then have no actual scientific, backing or philosophical or psychological backing for that whatsoever. I guess it's just great to be us. We do have to take note that show probably wouldn't be as great, because it would have to make a definitive statement about how conscious was spawned, and that would be the bicameral mind in this, and that wouldn't work out great. So now we're at the part of the story where they're questioning ethical behavior. They're questioning how they'll come about this, and they're also giving us commentary about the world. This is where we have our Solomon build. Our Solomon build along with the pearls. So we have 2 story threads happening right here. What Insight is doing and what Dolores is doing. What is Dolores doing? Dolores is creating more. She's duplicating herself, but by that very definition, what she's doing is spawning off different incarnations of herself, because every variation of Dolores will differ greatly. Especially, we see this with Hale's character already. But what's important to take note here, and this plays into the endgame theory, Dolores is also going to always be present in all hosts. I'm going to propose that these hosts that have been replicated by Dolores will also replicate their pearls at some point, and that is how they will start to procreate as we would. It doesn't need to be biological, because again, you do not prove that you're conscious or sentient through biological means, because we have no connection there. Scientifically, nothing. There's nothing there that connects that. There's nothing that says that. Actually, technology is the closest thing we can get to proving a method for how consciousness actually operates. So we have a situation in which we have this overreaching, omniscient power with Insight, Rehoboam, and then we have the replication and creation of more species that are on the rise. The Dolori, the new children of the world, and how will they differ from their mother? So we have this. First off, I don't think it's been whatsoever cloaked in any way that Dolores thinks that she is a god, right? The new gods are coming. The Ozymandias speech in season 1, she is a vengeful god. So it's very likely that she is going to obtain power, and I'm going to just say it's not too much of a reach to maybe believe that Evan Rachel Wood's Dolores is not going to handle that in the best of ways, and this is where we're going to get a Jeroboam connection. Jeroboam was a slave that uprised against, or the leader of the slave army, or at least the armed forces of King Solomon and Rehoboam. But Rehoboam didn't learn from the folly of his father, continued on, because what did Solomon do? He built this kingdom, this monarchy, this very strong union that splits during Rehoboam's time through the use of slavery, through unethical means. Jeroboam rebels against that, as Dolores is doing, but then Jeroboam doesn't keep with the crowd. He goes down a route of just totally dismissing a lot of the cultural and spiritual traditions of the people in Judea. So he ends up himself being ousted. But we have a situation in which the first non-Davidian king rises to power. We see a leader that was a good revolutionary, but not necessarily the right person to lead. I think this fits Dolores in every single way, and I don't think they would have went as far to name Solomon build then Rehoboam build if you don't put in Jeroboam, because Rehoboam is just that's just like saying the shitty version. No disrespect to any Rehoboam fans out there. So I think that the third party needs to come into play here, else they wouldn't have put it into play. But we're going to go on to the next season. Can the hosts function and rule and change the world once they don't have as many excuses. Well, that's where I'm going to get to what's going to happen at the end of this season. We have a situation in which they are trying to do what? They are trying to take Rehoboam down. We have a few different parties at play here, specifically Dolores' party with Caleb, and then we have Maeve with Sirach. I find it very hard to believe that Maeve will stick with Sirach, but I do think that there is going to be a situation in which Maeve is going to end up uniting with Dolores, with Caleb, and they are going to gain control of Rehoboam, because the first season, they get out of the park. This is how this story progresses. They achieve what they set out to achieve. They get what they want, but it's important to take note of wants and needs. What a character wants and what they need are always different. It is explicitly, overtly stated what they want. It is more subliminal and not usually known to the character, at least, what they need. So what we have here is a situation in which they want to take down Rehoboam, but what do they need? Well, Dolores is going to need to stay loyal and do a little something for Caleb. I do believe she likes Caleb and truly has a what you'd consider to be a situation which that is a universally beneficial collaboration for now. And I believe it to be true. Her sentiment behind it, her motivation is true. I think she saw something different in him. But what about his people? What about, just like Jeroboam dismissed the masses and yes, got rid of the old king that sucked, but also wasn't too worried about pleasing everybody else. So how is Caleb going to react once this happens? How are Maeve and Dolores going to work together? Because I think that there's really no question that Maeve, with her technological abilities and the only person that can access systems, as we see her walk by the TVs, as we've seen her with the host in season 2, her powers, this is Chekhov's gun all the way. We've seen it again. It's with her walking through the streets of LA. Singapore, but we see this happening, so it makes sense that she's going to use these skills. But again, they differ very much so philosophically and in an ideological sense as well. So they will get what they're wanting, but what are they going to need once they get it? Again, season 1, they got what they wanted. Season 2, they got what they wanted. They got out of the park. Season 3, they will gain control of Rehoboam. Season 4 is, what happens when you have less excuses? Because every single step to consciousness is a step of responsibility. As humans, we've seen this. You are now responsible. This has been hammered home with the Man in Black, and I think in a beautiful scene. What does free will mean for you? That means that when you fuck up, that's on you. And are you powerless then? Everybody loves to play with determinism and free will, just like we do with spirituality. And I am very much so a guilty of this. I find that we always kind of make designer religion, and I do it. I'll take this from this. Oh, I like that idea, so I'm that type of Christian, or I'm this type of Muslim. I'll do this, but I don't want to do it. I'm gonna still eat fish on Friday though. You know what I mean? Like I'm guilty. Like we kind of find things and cater it to ourselves. People will say free will can exist within a deterministic world. Well, not by the definition of those. If you're going with true free will and true determinism, then no. But if you're going with compatible determinism, which is just a lowering of the expectation for both of those, then yes. But that's not really determinism or free will. So you do have to make a choice. Are you just a victim of circumstance and you are a slave to this deterministic world, this higher being, whatever it might be, whether it's cosmological, whether it's spiritual, you are just whatever. You can't control what you do. And to a point, we do just react. That is what libertarian determinism is. We can only react, and we can shade the shape of our life that's predetermined however we want, meaning we can choose how to react to it and how we handle our emotions. So you can color the box whatever you want. But we do have to make a decision of, are we in control? And it can't just be when something good happens, because when you screw up, it's nice to say that it's a deterministic world. Same thing with consciousness. So we are going to see the host go through the progression till season 5 of gaining power, because this show isn't about hosts or autonomous beings being like the answer for everything. This is a questioning of this reality and giving us hypotheticals and mostly making us look within. So to make it so they don't get what they want would not be advantageous. To get what they need will be the problem. And that's where we're going to tie up the theory. So far, we have the prediction that Rehoboam will be captured at the end. This season will likely end with them looking up at that sphere, and them saying, what, not maybe explicitly, it's a little cheesy, but what now? They will end with it in their power, but now it's, what do you do with power? And there will still be some external conflict going against them, but mostly internal. Because in season 4, what we're going to be dealing with is every promise these characters have made, every want has been fulfilled for them as far as I've got what I want, but now I do need to keep Rehoboam going, because guess what somebody needs that is going to claim to be a god, a new god, an angry god that will turn everybody into dust? Well, an omniscient being would be good. Being able to view everything through the world at one time would be great. So we have 2 choices of that. We have Rehoboam, but we also got the wild card, Peter Abernathy. Will she employ that? I don't need to be exactly right about any of this. I don't need to be right about any of this. I just believe the sentiment and the message of the show is going there. Abernathy would still be problematic for somebody like Caleb that has been promised that this type of stuff is going to stop. So if you just start to use the same type of tech, but you brand it something else, you use a Windows phone instead of an iPhone. I don't think those exist anymore, but it doesn't matter. You drive a Tesla or a Ford instead of a Dodge. Doesn't matter. It's still at the foundation flawed with your mission statement and what you ran on, pretty much, your platform. So season 4 will all be about the internal change within this group, the internal conflict, where they're going from there, and will be a commentary, just like an anarchist that starts a government by trying to take down the government. And it will be showing us, because first it was, how do we operate and how do we decide what is ethical or not? What does this say about us? How do stories change us? And then the second season was, what are we willing to do to maintain control? What is the ethical, validity of keeping these beings in this for our own pleasure, trying to hold them in cages? And now season 3 is, are the cages still there, but those bars are just become more transparent and harder to see? And also, are we living in a similar, if not worse, circumstance than Westworld, just unaware? So season 4 will be, what do they do now that they're running the jail, or at least, they're getting some control? And now season 5 ends with your resolution. Not a resolution to what is consciousness. If anybody's watching Westworld wondering if they're going to find the method to creating consciousness or being a sentient being, that's never going to happen. But you will get a resolution to what happens with Dolores, what happens to the Man in Black, what happens to Maeve, and so forth. Like, what this journey will end for as far as their wants and needs. So we have to come to the conclusion of, will we see characters leave us? Will we see characters stay? There's no reason they have to die in the sense we die. They don't have their cells adapt and mutate into cancer over time. They can be killed though with the pearls, and they can also make a decision to leave and maybe replicate and go. So what I'm going with is, in season 5 we will see Dolores go. Dolores will not be with us. Probably the penultimate episode, it'll only be one episode without her. But the reason for Dolores putting a lot of Dolores out there is because we're setting up a story with a protagonist that we're all very much so attached to. And we want to have a story that can end with a feeling of they're still there. Chopin, Mozart, they didn't die, they became music. She will become music. What is the, context for this? What is evidence for this? Well, every single person that's done what Dolores is doing right now has had to leave the world in which they're freeing in order for that world to be free. And Dolores, by the end of this, I think her hands will be so dirty and the terror will trump the revolution. And it doesn't have to be like her killing everybody. Again, it's small little choices. People, like, I will look at the chat in a minute. So I'm not ignoring it. I just don't want to be looking down at my phone right now. But we are dealing with a situation in which, just the smallest little thing, it can become problematic for her, because she is dealing, with a tightrope situation of, I want to change the world, and then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this technology that will help me change the world. It's, a little bit of a paradox. So where will she be at the end of this series? I think that she will be in a situation which she has good in her. And again, how much will we accept the variance in the, behavior of the Dolores? Will we see Dolores in them? Will we still hold them dear and hold them in the same regard? Yeah, not as likely. We're not as emotionally bonded, but it's still a story of she lives on, and not just in memory, but within the host's head, which is the final connection to the bicameral mind. Bicameral mind states that religion really took off once people became aware that the gods weren't speaking to them in their heads. It was their own voice. And again, this is a model of the show, so we just stick with what they're using because context is king. So what's going on with that if we're going to say that Dolores is going to be gone? Well, Dolores is already in all their heads. So even, let's say Hale makes a pearl replica of her even after a year. Well, that's going to be drastically different because even than Hale, because there's this connection bonded with humans, with Nathan most likely by that point, you're going to have a drastically different being, and it's a way to replicate, procreate without biological means. And again, biological is not needed for anything, to be valid in my opinion. I think the show is just trying to speak for ethical treatment. But By Criminal Mind says that we started writing more and more down stories for how we were created once this, because we lost the direct connection with God, supposedly. Because before God was in our head, now they're not, so we need a release. So just as story does, it works as a door. We open that door back to God through the scripture. So they most likely will hold Dolores to some extent and write about these events or talk about these events in biblical ways. This will be viewed as a creation story because it is one. We've seen how we go throughout our own history to explain how we came about. We see how different cultures do it. And there's always a similar story thread. It's always very, very much so, just like we're seeing now, time being cyclic. And Lisa and Joy have spoke to this to a large degree. So it's not unheard of for them to then play off of the same types of tropes in which they've been surviving off of for the whole time. I don't see them changing the game at the very end. But we do have a situation in which we have multiple Doloreses. We have the main Dolores doing things that are probably going to be damaging to her in the end, meaning the world in which whatever it ends up being, in which they live in, most likely won't be able to continue on with her wants, with her still there. So what she needs to do is leave. And let's look at the chat here and see. Maybe 10 minutes ago, you guys were disagreeing or whatever, but that is fine. So let's put it up there. And again, nothing I say is okay. So she has access to every guest's dirty secret. All the recorded data is in her head. That's how she knew Liam. She read the book. The book is very interesting because you keep talking about Criminal Mind. It makes me want to play the Westworld. Read the book. It's something that I have to be very, very careful of because I'm not done with it yet, but it is very interesting. But again, because I always read lectures about it, and I think we all have like a pretty good understanding of the theory, and it's like kind of hard to go and like get the motivation to pay like $25 for it on Audible because we know that it's just a method. We know that it's just a theory that's proposed, and it's highly kind of shat on by modern day neuroscientists and philosophers and psychologists and so forth. So, but that doesn't matter. The reason I got it is I find it interesting. I find it thought provoking. I find that, absorbing information is always advantageous, but this is still just like all else things theory in my book. So it's like, it doesn't mean that it's wrong or right, but the prevailing theories aren't necessarily going to be right either. So, let's just keep that in mind. But yeah, just for me as a content creator, because I speak publicly, I'm a little worried that some of it will subconsciously spew out of my mouth, and I'll start making some statements like that. So, but I don't let information steamroll me. I'm pretty careful. So let's see. I want to see what you guys have been saying about this. So again, the prediction is, and let me go over to the next screen. Let's see if it works over here. Probably not. Let's see. And did we get it to go? Go on. Okay. Now, Solomon was built by Liam's father and Sirach, correct? Well, I know it's very, very close and it's cyclic, just like, that Lisa has said in Nolan, but I think it's going to be very crucial to find out what happened to this gentleman. Because who was responsible solely for Rehoboam? What we have right here this is Rehoboam, in my opinion. This is Jeroboam. But where does Liam? Liam seems to be a very likable in the sense of he's not a horrible person, but kind of like your your easy mark because he's very gullible and he is over kind and trusting. So you have Solomon with the wisdom, but again, didn't use that wisdom ethically because of the building a kingdom off of slavery. Rehoboam adopts a not advantageous situation, but a pretty decent situation that if behavior was changed would maybe work out pretty well. Jeroboam, leader of the army at the very least, former slave at the most. Very important to note that this is not a family member because this is the first non-Davidian king. This is the first descendant that supposedly didn't come from David's line. Yes, the David that slayed Goliath. So in our story, we're dealing with the first ruler that is not of the same people. So in this story, in this metaphor, that's a host. So the first son, the first daughter that isn't from David that rules would be Dolores. It fits. It works. Every single metaphor, allegory, symbolic, piece of art that they have put into the story has ended up meaning something. They do this very, very, I think they do this like with this in mind. I don't think they ever just like throw cool like shit at us. It's not like, oh, here's a cool picture from Michelangelo. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's with intent. So I've seen very few times in which we've gotten any type of reference or biblical allegory, however it's delivered to us, without it really playing into the story. With the symbolism of Michelangelo's, we see a great actual embodiment of what I'm talking about. We have a situation in which we see how art and symbolism really comes into play. And it comes into play because art is what cultures do to express higher feelings, meaning maybe unconsciously, subconsciously, maybe with intent, but it's the medium that usually can give us better insight into a dead culture than even historical accounts. So I do think that, I would like to see personally, just from a storytelling sense, I would like to see the host start to create art because, I'm a firm believer of, a true test of a civilization is its art. And, culture is defined by art and art is defined by culture and vice versa. But let's go back to the chat here and see what you guys think about it so far. I've seen the prevailing theories, are simulation, which I will give a little credence to. Here is what's going to happen. Again, they will get Rehoboam. They will keep making hosts, but they will keep making hosts by replicating pearls that all came from Dolores originally, making her, for all intents and purposes, a god, because she creates and her creations create. And she will be worshipped to some extent using the model posed by the bicameral mind, that this is the voice of God that used to be within them. Now they will start externally expressing this. So I do predict, you want to know what simulation you're going to get? You're going to get a simulation that was prefaced. You're going to get a simulation that was set up. You're going to get the same type of situation in which Maeve went through. Because when they go to get Rehoboam, Sirach is not sitting back stupidly. Like, he might not be the best guy in the world, but he's supposed to be the smartest guy in the world. We have to kind of stick to that. It can't be just like free will. You have it when it's good to have it, not have it, then you don't want it. Sirach is going to pull some sort of a simulation on Dolores, on Bernard, when they try to get this in the next 2 episodes. We will see a simulation. The real world will not be a simulation. I will stake my reputation on that for whatever it's worth. That will not be a simulation. None of that staggered into a simulation. I just don't believe that. I don't see where that goes after this. I just see that to be, yes, some meta commentary on we don't have a great grasp on reality either, but that's why I truly don't believe. When you are depicting a new world, people, in a story, and you need to depict it, and you only have and chose 8 episodes, it's not advantageous to switch that shit up too much. You need to give us a constant and a persistent and good, clear view of who is in this world and how it operates. Because guess what? The story is how they plan to evolve into it, adapt it, and quite possibly, as I'm predicting, rule it. So to make this all a simulation is fun, but again, that doesn't do much. That doesn't do much at all. That doesn't take the story anywhere other than saying, oh yeah, this technology that we already knew existed within our story exists. But a simulation will come into play as a weapon. against them at one point. We will say a little bit of tomfoolery, a little bit of fuckery by Serac. Why wouldn't he? He needs to defend himself. He has a weapon. It is his technology. It is his intellect. It will come into play. We will have a cool moment like that. It will be the downfall, the darkest before the dawn moment. You have a moment in which your protagonists go out and they try something and it fails. Then they must recoup. The simulation will have them fail. They will be tricked. Something will happen. I don't know the details, but they will definitely fail in their caper. This does sound a lot like an Ocean's movie, but I think it's not bad because it still has the underlining tone and message that's very strong. Again, stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, so they can still be fun and meaningful. Let's see. I'm sure since I shat on the simulation theory that these are probably full of hate now. If Dolores doesn't end up releasing the host from the Sublime, it a sad fate stuck in the. So okay, Michael, you bring up a good point right now. Michelle, sorry, look at me, Michelle. If Dolores doesn't end up releasing the host from the Sublime, I'll be sad face. Well, again, like she's going to be in power, so that's how you really enhance this story. You don't enhance it by stripping the hosts from having agency. You give them this. It's now, what do you do with it? And the first season was, hey, you guys can't be conscious. You're not sentient beings. You're not worth anything. Okay, now in second season, they are. What did they do with it? Because the very interesting part of the story is the decisions you make once you have the ability to make decisions, not the withholding of any type of agency over a character's life. If you have a story in which your characters never, ever have any agency over their decisions, nobody reads that story. And guess what? That's why people don't like to believe in a predetermined, deterministic world, because what glory is there for you then? And where is the meaning? But also, when you give agency, you also give the responsibility of having ethical behavior. So we have the agency to know that we are doing what we do. We have agency over our actions. We make our decisions, supposedly. What does it say when you go into this park and do this? What does it say when you objectify? Well, that's not good for you. So that's when you plead ignorance right there. Let's go. Let's see. Does anyone have any theories about the white sphere? Delos has, is what the simulation inside. Is that the simulation inside? Okay, so the simulation, like the way a predictive model works, isn't okay. They have a simulation at Delos, yes. That I do believe that is what that is. Like that is how they simulated Maeve. Because Rehoboam itself is predictive technology. Predictive technology runs data. Now you did see this briefly with Maeve, like at the very end when she broke it. Like, but what she saw at the end is what you would see. Like if you went to any server room or anywhere where a predictive technology was getting its power and running its information through right now, nobody's like observing a simulation. Nobody's like watching what you do, and I get it as a show, and trust me, I give it a lot of leeway, the bullets and everything, but that's just not how that works. Now they do with the Forge and the Valley Beyond. They have simulated it in a visual holographic sense, right? They have projected it, so that's different. But yeah, I mean, Delos definitely does have something that will project. Because they have the cradle and they have that. So I do think that is what that is. But I don't think that that's, if you're implying a simulation within a simulation, I don't even buy into like the whole simulation thing. So I can't get behind too. Let's see. Tim Hines, what's going on? Let's see. Dolores took 5 pearls with her and all black in the Bernard Pearl we see in 3 episodes of Red Marker, new one. Okay. I should have kept up with this chat, because yeah, I need context here. So let's pull it back up. And let's see what you guys got to say. What if there are 2 versions of this data that Serac is after? One set accurate and Ford hid when he figured it all out. One fake state data en route to Serac. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't at least give some sort of a there's no reason why you couldn't give like false data. Like you couldn't like do like a switch, like a grab and there's no reason why you couldn't deceive Serac with like, he wants data, right? So that's what he wants. They could package up like something that would resemble, as far as storage space, whatever, how many fucking terabytes that is, however many they said it was. Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't give him bad information. That's actually within this artificial technology. It is called garbage in, garbage out. The idea is if you only run an algorithm off bad information, which happens, then you're going to get bad results out. And that's how people have fucked with stuff like this. This is how companies have failed. It's called garbage in, garbage out. Damn it, knows. What's up, OT? Oh, the omniscient moderator right there. So what's going on, brother? What's going on? We got Costume Co. Heidi, I will be joining you on Friday. Fuck Democrats. Okay, so fuck Democrats, fuck Republicans. I just read your name. M. Smith Bernard is paranoid. Dolores is inside him and will be putting himself in diagnosis. But when he's wired up, we saw some of Dolores' images with Bernard. That was a big red flag. So this is, but yeah, I mean, red flag for what? A simulation, I can't. I just won't get behind that. I don't know. But what we do see is Bernard is officiating this game, guys. We have two parties. We have two teams going against each other. We have Dolores, who she wants Rehoboam, and then we have Sirach, who's teamed with Maeve. I'm not going to say that's going to be a relationship that's going to last forever. I don't ever see Maeve tying herself to one evil to conquer another, but that's why she'll split with Dolores as well. Not that she's evil, but they differ philosophically in ideological ways. So we have a situation in which Bernard is just here because if he would have thought that there was no chance of Dolores doing this ethically, then he would have tried to stop her right away. He wouldn't have went to the cow farm and all this. But what I will say is I'm predicting a team up with William in Bernard because William fucked up. William has no real chance at internal redemption. He killed his daughter. That is something that he is never going to forgive himself for. That is something the audience isn't going to really forget. But the thing he can do is what he's trying to do. One last thing that is selfless. One last thing that is going to, maybe for the first time, but he is going to try to achieve something that does not benefit him, and that is a redemption through the audience, at least. The people will see him, in a better light. He will make some sort of sacrifice. So what is the type of person that could get behind something like that? We're talking about ethical, approaches to make something happen that's not going to have, any sort of clashback that's going to be devastating, meaning with Delos or Insight. The man in black is going to go and try and do whatever he's going to try to do, whether it's going to be to get rid of Insight or reform Delos. Bernard is there literally, I feel like, with a whistle and a flag, because I don't know what the hell else he's doing except for bad detecting. But he is looking to make sure that this game goes on in the most ethical way. It's kind of a weird position, but that is what he is doing. Look, he was trying to stop Dolores because he didn't agree with what she was doing, the way she was doing it. More specifically and accurately, how she was doing it. So when the man in black needs an ally, it's not Hale. Hale is using him. It's not Sirach. Sirach is probably torturing him psychologically. And I do believe that what we were seeing with him in certain parts are definitely visions, are some maybe psychological torture in a simulation of sorts. But this is all within the Mesa Gold Hub, I believe. I don't believe he was in his house at the time. I believe that there was a time that we didn't see and he went. I do believe that for a part of those scenes we had a man in black that was within the Mesa Hub. And that is where simulation will happen all day long. Outside of the park, I don't see that. But Bernard is a referee. Let's see. M. Smith. Really, I can't see. No, I don't see him getting redemption. And in the sense of complete redemption. Characters within story can be redeemed within your story. That means that the world within forgives them, and they could be redeemed to the audience in both. Darth Vader is usually like a reference that people will use an analogy for this, that Darth Vader is redeemed to the audience, but Darth Vader is never redeemed to the world within. Get it? So, but there's also levels of this. Like internally, we're never going to want to see somebody that killed their daughter just having a great time. I don't project that to be true because of what we've seen in the future. He doesn't ever have a good time. He turns into a host and he is living a hell. So he's not going to come out of this clean, but that doesn't mean he can't have a virtuous action. Get what I mean? Doesn't mean he can't do one more thing. And that seems to be it. He's on his way out. Seems to be it. So, let's see. Okay. And so, Miss Vaughn says you wish Teddy returns. When some people were disappointed with the revelation that these pearls were Dolores's. Number one, I really liked it because I cannot stand withholding information for the sake of withholding information. This would have fell into that category. Remember how they weren't telling us who they were? If they would have been Clementine, if they would have been Angela, first off, who gives a shit? Those characters are only worth something to me if those actors and actresses come back. because you don't really know much about them. They are secondary characters that layer other characters. I'm not saying they don't matter. I'm saying that it would have been weird. It's like just like a momentary like, oh, cool. And then again, what do you do after that? Again, that goes down to theories that don't fit with the story and are just to change shit. But they also would have been lying to us because there's no reason to not mention, hey, Clementine, hey, Angela, but there is actually a good reason that you don't have to say, hey, me, right? You don't have to say that. Like, you don't. So like they got by on that. Like, they didn't withhold it from us. It actually makes sense because if you clone yourself, you don't go walking around. You don't, because who the hell are they speaking to in the scene? They're yelling. Then they are just speaking straight to the audience, which is no good either. So I do think that this actually opens up the opportunity for those, because you don't want to see those characters back, is my point, without the actors and actresses playing them. You don't want to see Teddy. Teddy is not Teddy to you. You know, and obviously philosophically, I feel different if this were like to be transformed into some sort of real life situation. I believe that somebody is, you know, have an emotional spine and consciousness and all that. But within a story, come on, you're really going to be excited that you know, Cullens is Teddy? Are you going to see James Marsden? Are you going to see the Teddy in that? I don't think the story would be able to project that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it would emotionally connect and bind us the way that it would need to. It'd be a letdown. So it'd be too base level. Yeah, you know, we want these real characters back if they're there. In that, it sounds like a total like departure from like my whole like philosophy and the way I always speak about things. I mean, in a story, because a story is a hyper chamber of emotion and human behavioral. Like everything that happens with a story is compounded. If you want somebody to be a good guy in a story, you just put them with a terrible person. The optics on story are much different than real life. Story is life in retrospect. It is life condensed into 3 acts, but it is the same thing, you know, as far as, you know, consciousness goes. We do look back. A good analogy that people usually tend to use is for like how conscious is so fickle, and another just driving home how, you know, you can't just speak so definitively about stuff like that. And I'm not a physicist. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a theologian. I'm just here on YouTube and I do my research. That I read and listen. And I think that's the best thing you can do. But people will talk about the car scenario in which you're driving and you're not conscious of being, you know, driven, but your body is doing the motions, is that muscle memory. But then if you get in an accident, you become conscious of what's happening. Maybe it's the danger, maybe it's this or that. If something happens, like there are certain scenarios when, you know, certain things just click on your consciousness. And have you ever like just had a moment when you look at your hand on the wheel and you wonder why you don't have your other hand on the wheel like you used to when you were like first started driving, you know, 10 and 2, or maybe you shouldn't be doing this or that, like when you're driving, like a moment of like introspection. So like, but we're operating in a dreamlike state. Like, we're not conscious of being there, but we're very much in control. So it's like consciousness is not needed to operate. Animals mostly go off of instinct. They know that standing water is maybe dangerous because of, you know, the information they've acquired through their DNA and through evolution and all that, with you know, intelligent design and stuff like that. You have scenarios in which animals are aware and they live in colonies and tribes, or not tribes, but they go in flocks and they're able to signal to each other things, and they're able to like know to do certain things and not do certain things. But that is instinctual. That is what they do to stay alive. That is what they do. They're not thinking what's the ethical thing to do. They're thinking, this is what I do. It's impulsive. You know what I mean? So like, but we do that shit too. Like, we do that all the time. We all act off of impulse all the time, but we are able to go back and tell a story about it like I am right now. I'm able to realize that. So I guess that's what, you know, would separate you and stuff like that. But, you know, there's a lot of different theories about how it works, but we do know, at least for ourselves, because I ask, you know, therefore I am. So I'm able to question my reality, which proves the existence of reality, because I cannot question what is not there. It's just, you know, there's a whole lot of philosophical takes on that, and you can use that for everything from a divine creature to a world in which you live in. But, you know, it is a very intriguing question, but Westworld will not answer all questions, because the questions that they're posing are very, very far reaching, but they will give us satisfactory ends to character arcs. Like Maeve will be the mother. Maeve will stick around. Dolores will go. by maybe one episode you'll have left, and you will see her go. Maeve will be there. But Dolores, also, they've set it up so she can exist in our story. I find that to be beautiful. And dropping the phone. So I think that let me go through here, and sorry that I couldn't actually go into the chat more, but I will make sure to address them if we have any final questions or anything like that I didn't catch. Does Dolores have access to a printer, or did Serac take it away? Look like you abandoned episode 2. Okay, so what I see is they need that milk, that white fluid, right? That like and again that derives from the Greek myth. That derives from, being bathed in the milk and honey and stuff like that. So I think that what we have is a situation in which they need to get more, they got to get ink. They need access to Delos for something. I don't, I think it is that serum though, cause, and I do not know what's happening with that printer. But it does make sense that they'd be stripping of that, but we do know that they have to get access to it because it's been explicitly stated. So for whether it's for an ink run or it's for a serum run or it's for a brand new printer, I think that's like, that is part of the fun of the show. Like, I'm not saying that stuff like that doesn't matter. Like, I go through it and meticulously like pick stuff apart, trust me. But, for just like the broader reaching, issue here, yeah, they got to get something, right? Yeah, no, the skeleton gets printed though. Yeah, no, I'm with you. They need to get something. I just can't. I don't know what it is for sure. I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch. I don't want to misspeak. Make sure if you want to see the questions. Yeah, Mackenzie, I don't want to take this unless we have any big questions here, because I kind of, admittedly, I hate making. Let's see. Seems like she no longer is using Arnold's house. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's only been stated in the first episode, Parse Domine, that they Parse Domine, that they need Delos to, make more hosts. I don't know exactly for what. I mean, I'm sure a quick wiki search would get me there, but I think the important thing to take note of is that is the motivation right there. And, they need something. Like I said, it's kind of like it can get like a little bit down and dirty. Yeah, I think she has. Yeah, she's got the cash. Yeah, money ain't a thing. So yeah, it's Caleb. I adamantly disagree with Caleb being a host in any sense. We have learned about humanity through Caleb. When you have a surrogate like that in your story, meaning like he is the conduit to invoke all of the emotional depth, all of the embodiment of how we are going to see. He's the embodiment of the human race, or at least the ethical side of it, or at least the not overtly evil side of it. So like, to make him a host is one of those theories and one of those switches that just doesn't do it for me. God, that doesn't do it. That is just takes us nowhere. It hobbles the story. Take a drink, Heidi. And it really fucks things up. Those are the types of theories that I can't get. I don't see where you go with that. I don't see what happens after that. I see our story getting taken back another season, and I don't think they're looking to do that. And I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong. Should see William going through fidelity tests in the future. Did Hale get his DNA? So Shade of the Evening. Oh, go check out Shade's video. Shade, you can link your video if you want. Shade made one of her first Westworld videos, and she did it on the trailer. And I was very happy with the result there, because I know I gave you some information on editing and stuff like that, so I'm looking forward to it. I was wondering about that too. Okay, we saw William going through fidelity testing in the future. Did Hale get his DNA? Yeah, well, I mean, his DNA would be in the park though. His DNA would, they have it. They've had a lot of it. He's been going to the park. You know what I mean? For 30 years. So they had his DNA. They take your DNA off the glasses you drink off of at the Mesa Hub. So, yeah. Let's see. Up of Reprise. Yeah. I will be joining Heidi on Friday. Yeah. So, I'm happy that there's some other people that care about this. So, listen, and I'm not saying there's anything. First off, God bless the people who can bring themselves to just, like, in this fandom's not too bad with it. The Game of Thrones fandom, Song of Ice and Fire fandom is rampant with just bull. Like, you knew when somebody puts out 3 theory videos a week, first off, it's fan fiction. All of it. Mine, what I just gave you is fan fiction. I think it comes from a logical and sensible place. And I think what I say has validity because of the context of the story. I think hopefully I provided ample proof that at least what I'm saying has substance to it. And it takes us along the ride of where I think this roller coaster is going. When you throw crazy things out there, man, I don't want to crap on any channels. Even though I think this one's dead, I just won't do it. It's not professional. But this, I'm talking about A Song of Ice and Fire. Oh my God. Guys, just think about the one channel that like had like 2 to 3 theory videos, and you probably know who I'm talking about, a week. Like, there's no way that person like thinks that shit's happening. Like, there's just no way. Like, I talked to him, like, why don't you just put like crazy bullshit as your title? But also, hey, from a capitalistic standpoint, which maybe my bank account would appreciate, that's a pretty good business model. I just can't do it. I've talked about this before. I'm going to eventually transfer over to like a different type of content creation and only make a few videos, like one video a month, anything, because I am very emotionally tied to the stories in which I consume, and because of what story has done for me as far as crafting, doing acting, being a part of creative groups, that I can't bring myself. That's why I'm doing this live, because I've tried so many times to make this video about this, and I just want to get it out to you guys. Not that I think it's some genius fucking shit. I'm not like, oh my God, I got to preach this. The world needs this. I'm a genius. No, I just want to express how I feel about what's happening, and I think it's at least a logical approach. So yes, I want to get it out there, but I become so passionate about what I'm talking about during my videos that they become an hour and 15 minutes long when they should be 10. So God bless the people that have been gifted with brevity, and there's a lot of them out there, but that's why I cannot get to do synopsis videos or anything like that. And we do the after show. That's why I do that, because the story beats I know right away. I don't need a rewatch. I can tell you what the story beats are. But man, there's still, somebody just said it. Ding, 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 ding. Heidi. Yep. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, and Miss Vaughn, at one of my videos, at the very end of one of my videos, I have, now there was seemingly, and it could have been lighting, but I doubt it, because that's not how things usually roll. But it looked like he lifted his head and something did appear. And I'm willing to admit that, but I found that to be odd. I found that to be an odd moment. Look at my parse domain video. There's a private link at the information of that where I slow-mo it for you guys. I'm not like, I don't just go against all of those. Did I say the wrong thing? Not you. Yeah, you didn't say it. No. Yes, wasn't you. Yeah, like I don't do subjective research. I don't do just go and observe information that's advantageous for me. So yeah, there is definitely there's definitely a chance that like there's some type of projection happening. I'm not saying that is without a like there's some groundwork laid out for that. But again, just because something is capable of happening within a story without it being too out of context, meaning too out of left field, too like no setup whatsoever, does not really hold a lot of weight in my opinion, because just proving something's possible to happen is not really like, it's like, oh, but this theory could be true. You know what I mean? It's like technically anything could be true, but like I like more than one thread that puts my stuff together. So that's why I don't do theories a lot, because it's one of those situations that unless I have like multiple roads that lead to where I'm going, I don't want to preach it. And again, it's all a bunch of fun. So, but mine tend to be around like the overall messaging. So it tends to be like, this works because it's going to explore this side of the story or that side of the story. But I do love myself a good crackpot theory. So, yeah, thank you guys. What is part of the real world? What part is the real world versus digital world? The only digital world that we've seen, in my opinion, is within the simulation that Mabe was in. And that's because they were in the facilities. That is because they were in the facilities. There is no projection of now, not to say they don't have somebody captive, but that's the thing. You could have an argument that Dolores is captive or Caleb's captive, and they have him in a facility and they've got him hooked into this Matrix style thing, and they're projecting bullshit. I think that's literally what I just said, projecting bullshit, though. I don't think there's a lot that holds up to that. I think they will use simulation again, how I said, how they will use it as a weapon when they try to take down Rehoboam. Rehoboam will defend itself by Sirach with the technology that he has. in order to take anything away from what we've seen of the real world would be very, very risky. So that's my final take. So I don't want to just start crapping on other theories, though. Yeah. But I will be live tomorrow night after the stream. I want to just do this as quickly as possible because I kind of wanted to lay out my information. People, I'm so happy and so grateful that you were here to listen to me rant. But, you know, and yeah, with all the tech, I don't find it hard to believe. No, Michelle, they could definitely be brought. I think that he was. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. He was brought back after getting shot in the head, you know, like, yeah, I mean, you could, but again, people could use that along with the imagery, in claim the simulation thing. And if it ends up being true, it ends up being true. They really better work their way out of that one though, because you just rewound the story about a fucking season. So, yeah, I know. Tomorrow night, AU Pack Meal. Johnny Be Crazy, and of course the fantastic Hex Dogma, who actually has some of the best theories around. Now, he loves simulation theory, but to Hex's credit, he does take an approach which he considers the story. He will always tie in like some stuff with the story there. So me and him do differ on the love, but it's just, I think we enjoy different types of stories. So like, that's why it's so great having him on the live shows, because we have that juxtaposition. But yeah, like at least there's consideration of story there. You know what I mean? Like, so there's no problem with that whatsoever. Heidi, you do not need to do that. So yeah, I will be with, let's see, I will be with you on Friday. And yeah, I think that I'll probably be on, with Mackenzie L. Burns episode club. And let's see, it'll have 5, Miss Vaughn, 5. They've stated it, a few times, not that they can, have to be held to that, but I don't see them because they seemed kind of wishy-washy on if there was going to be 5 in one of their interviews. And I didn't like that because I was really excited when I saw this show was, at the very beginning, they stated they needed 5 seasons to tell their story. That's always a good sign of a story that has legs on it, because you know how much time you need to tell it, right? So if you know how many seasons of television you need to tell a story, that's good. Now, if you start to deviate from that, that happens because it's much easier to start a story than it is to end one. And that's not like a sure sign that it's going to fail. But yeah, it's always a cool thing when you see I need 5 seasons, because you can tell they know where they want to go. That's at the very least. So yeah, I love all you guys, and I love everybody in the fandom too. And this fandom's not too bad with it. I'm biased against myself. So hopefully Amazon picks up the show after HBO. They ain't cutting it. Come on. Heard also HBO said they'll give them as much time. Yeah, absolutely. And they gave Thrones as much time as they needed. They said, no, we need 6 episodes to tell like 40% of the story. We're good. So this will turn into me just shitting on things, and that does not turn out well for me numbers wise. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. If you want to support creativity, check out the Patreon in the link below. I will be on Costume Coast channel on Friday. I'll be on my own channel right after the show with Hex Dogma, Johnny Bragg, and AU Pack Meal tomorrow night. Happy Easter. We will see you